President of C Network. I've been on the board of C Network for the past about 15 years. The place is familiar to me at many of our events. And C Network, this is one of the events that we're running. What we're really doing here is about advice, workshops, seminars. We also have the startup incubator that we run out of. We work on Fifth Avenue in conjunction with our beautiful team. One of them is Harry, that's in the back there, and we know it's Harry. But I also want to bring this one to Joey Zolta, right? Joey Zolta is here tonight too, Joey. And there's another Joey Cottage, and there's another Joey. Right there, they're all panel for tonight. So without further ado, we'll let them get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. I'm very happy you guys are all here. We have an amazing event tonight for you guys. Very informative, I believe. We have an amazing panel, and I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Joe Zolta from Riverbend Consulting, which is a third-party Amazon seller company. And we do a lot of different things in our consulting company, and tonight we're actually going to touch on all three of them. We are going to talk about product, choose the right product. We're going to talk about profitability. We're going to be talking about compliance, and we're also going to be talking about fulfillment, which is another huge part of Amazon. I actually am lucky enough to have experience as a reseller, which there are two different types of sellers in the Amazon world. Some people call private label sellers are people that sell their own product, which some of you may be. And then there are also something called a reseller, which is a person that sells other people's products or branded products. And that's what people call jumping on listings. So if you're jumping on an existing page or an existing listing. So we're going to be touching on both of those tonight. I also have the luxury of being partners with someone that has an amazing history in compliance, Leslie here, who has been doing Amazon compliance work for 3 to 5 years. She's gotten countless accounts reinstated after their suspensions, and she has a real good feel for that type of work. Something very interesting about Amazon, especially in the world of Amazon, is that it's not just Amazon. It's an entire world of technology, of innovation. And when I say technology, there are different technologies for all the different aspects of an Amazon business. Right when I started, I was doing manual repricing. You guys are familiar with what repricing is? I'm sure some of you do repricing on your own. Now there are algorithms and programs that will do it automatically. There are amazing ways to do marketing where a few years ago there wasn't. So you can really, if you keep your eyes open and you really love this type of business, there are new things and new technologies coming out all the time. All you have to do is Google it, and literally it'll pop up. There are dozens of companies in almost every different area of softwares that can really do a lot of your work for you, automation. But we're not going to talk so much about that tonight. We're going to talk about the 4 or 5 most important things for you guys to look out for when you're running your Amazon business. I'd like to introduce the panel. So we're actually very lucky to have these people here on this stage. Everyone here has amazing experience. And I actually know most of them personally. I've dealt with most of them personally. They're really good people, and they've earned their spot up here because they've built really, really impressive, strong businesses. So first I'm going to start with Nathan Slammond.
Go ahead.
Nathan's the co-founder of AmazingFreedom.com. He's a host of the Amazing Freedom Amazon Seller podcast. He's an active partner of 2 7-figure brands that are primarily sold on Amazon. And he's in the process of building out a third with you. And he's actually hired 55, that's 55 full-time virtual assistants, which is very impressive. And they do all different type of seller services for him, and he puts a high value on developing business processes and outsourcing. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
For joining us.
Yep.
Next is Joey Tavish, right here. Joey is a tech entrepreneur for over 15 years in retail and e-commerce. He's been selling apparel on Amazon since 2012. In 2015, Joey partnered with David McCann, who's somewhere in front of all of him, and his Kids Town chain stores to further expand their reach in the apparel market. Sensing the need for wholesalers to properly represent their and sell their brands online, Lucky 21, which is Joey's company, developed a state-of-the-art hybrid business model to become exclusive sellers for brand owners on Amazon. They actually have 25 employees that specialize in all different aspects of the business, from pricing strategy, purchasing, optimization, marketing, photography, and customer service. So that's great. Next is Leslie Henson. Leslie is a partner at Riverbank Consulting. She has spent the majority of her career in helping small businesses improve their bottom lines with better processes, strategic marketing, and excellent communication. For the last 3 years, she's focused on helping Amazon sellers and their account suspensions and other challenging Amazon problems. I believe most of the panel has reached out to her with problems that they could not handle, and I think she figured it out, so pretty good. And she's actually been a seller on Amazon since 2010. Leslie lives in Texas with her husband and 2 sons. And last but not least, we have Lenny Ash, the man with the hat. Lenny is a partner at MMX Distribution and Services. Lenny has been selling on Amazon, I believe, alongside all of us, since 2003. How old are you, Lenny? He's been using FBA, which we're going to talk about tonight, since 2007. MMX services Amazon accounts for various other businesses, including his own, from other retailers, distributors, wholesalers, and importers since 2015. Lenny manages every aspect of his running business, running the Amazon business, from listing creation to warehousing, inventory management, fulfillment, marketing, the list goes on and on. Software, we do it all, huh? Okay. Okay, so I have a few slides to show you guys now. We'll look at the screen. Does this look like your door? Anyone? Yeah, it does. This is actually my house. No. But you can imagine this is actually what most Americans' front door looks like. And I think that's part of the reason why you guys are probably here, thinking, how do I get a piece of all these boxes that are being shipped to everyone's house? So if you actually think about it, you, your neighbor, and everyone else you know probably has all these showing up at their door. How many does this actually equate to? How much business does Amazon actually do? I'll show you. So, in 2017, this chart actually shows that Amazon did, this is total e-commerce sales. So in 2017, the number is over $486 billion. That's actually the percentage of total retail on the side. So e-commerce is 13% of total retail, anything that can actually be bought and sold online. So not including like gas and food, stuff like that, restaurants. So it's still only 13%. So a lot of people think like, oh, we hit our cap on how much business we can do online. We're like not even close, guys. Not even close. So the next slide this actually shows what Amazon sales are in billions. So if you could look at 2016 to 2017, it's a pretty large jump. That's actually 42, 43, 44 billion dollars. Total retail growth in 2017 was 126 billion. So if Amazon was 44 billion of the 126 billion, this is total retail, not just online retail. So that means it's about 36% to 32% of total growth in retail. This chart actually shows you what Amazon was to the entire e-commerce growth. So e-commerce growth in 2017 was 62 billion. Amazon was 70% of that. It's pretty crazy. And then on the bottom you can see 126, and Amazon was 35%. So there's definitely a lot of room to grow. I know a lot of you guys probably came here and were like, well, Amazon is so big already, and there are people doing it for 5 years, 200 years. I'm like, now, how do I get in? Well, there's still time, and if you learn and you study and you pay attention and you really master your craft, and whatever products you do, you can definitely get a piece of all those boxes that are at everyone's doorstep. Something I really wanted to just go over how important fourth quarter is. Fourth quarter is crazy. Before I even got into the business, everyone was talking how crazy fourth quarter was. I'm like, how much different could it be than third quarter or first quarter? It's the same thing. It's actually not. You need to be ready for fourth quarter. Whatever business you're doing, whatever products you're bringing in, be ready for fourth quarter. You can use all the forecasting reports you can think of, analyze your business as much as you can, but just to show you, fourth quarter 2017 grew 16% year over year. So, I mean, the numbers are staggering. And if you're not prepared, you can pretty much sell out within, the first 2 weeks of the holiday season. Sorry, I shouldn't have shown you that. This is what's coming, by the way, with Amazon. So, if you think that they're only ready for Prime in 2 days, this is coming. It's actually real. So, people will be getting things by the moment in hours after they order. So, actually, now I'm going to hand this over to Nathan.
Sure.
And we're going to actually ask Nathan some questions about product. Okay. Nathan, you know what?
Just make sure this is live. Everyone can hear me good. All right. You can see I'm in there somewhere. This is actually a private label retreat that we did last year in Breckenridge, Colorado. It was pretty cool, and I like to throw up those pictures because everyone looks so happy and has so much fun. Two of my partners are in there as well. I'm going to keep this brief since Joey already introduced me, but my name is Nathan Slamans. I am the co-founder of AmazingFreedom.com, which is our service side and consulting of our business, if anyone's ever seen that. And I am also the host of the Amazing Freedom Amazon Seller Podcast. Do I have any podcast listeners in here of the Amazing Freedom Podcast yet? Not enough hands, so after this, make sure you look up the Amazing Freedom Podcast, amazingfreedom.com/podcast. Well, New Yorkers listen to podcasts, right? Come on. So we do that. It's just topics on private label. We release an episode every week. I think we have 75 or so right now. Just really good topics on anything private label, selling on Amazon related. If you have questions about it, you can go there, look up an episode. They're pretty short, 20 to 30 minutes, and it'll get you some good information. I am a partner in 2 7-figure brands that are pretty much 95% plus sales are on Amazon. And as Joey mentioned, I am in the process of building out a third brand right now, which, to echo what you already said, a lot of people say, is there still opportunity out there? And what my partners and I often say is, if there wasn't, we wouldn't continue to build out new brands, which we are, because there is still opportunity, but you have to do it a little bit smarter than you may have had to a few years ago, and we'll talk about that once we get into these questions. I have been selling on Amazon since 2013. When I started, I actually was a reseller like Joey was. I was doing arbitrage. I don't know if we have arbitrage sellers in here. That is how I got started, and I moved into private label, which I felt like had more opportunity for me in the long run to build a brand and to do that. And I have hired over 55 VAs in the past year. I don't employ all of them still, but a good number of them we do employ. They are mostly in our service side, so we do a number of services that relate to Amazon, selling on Amazon, and that's mostly where they are helping us. That's about me.
Okay. All right, so Nathan's going to be covering product for us, so that's going to be his topic. I think he's probably the best person to talk about that since he's built 2 brands and now going on a 3rd. And private label is a lot more difficult than being a reseller. There's nothing wrong with being a reseller, but you're selling a product that someone else made. Nathan makes his own products, markets them, decides what the title is going to be, the bullet points, and finds his niche in Amazon. So Nathan, my first question for you is, how do you identify the right product to sell on Amazon?
Sure, so that's probably the number one question that anyone that's thinking about doing this is gonna have. We often say that 80 to 90% of success in private label depends on finding the right product, okay? If you don't find the right product, then it probably doesn't matter what you're gonna do afterwards. You can have the best marketing in the world, but if you don't have the right product, it's probably not gonna matter. You can only get so far. Whereas if you do have a good product and your marketing or whatever else is only so-so, you can probably still make it work just because you have the right product. And as many of us know, things like reviews are absolutely critical on Amazon. If you bring a product to the market and right away get a couple of 1-star reviews on that product, it's a very bad sign, and in most cases, there's not much you can do to pull yourself up from that. So finding the right product is critical, making a good product is critical, and that's what we'll talk about. So before I get into that, sorry, I forgot to introduce to my partners, Andy and Liran here. Liran's from New York, but Andy and Liran are in China. Liran was just at Amazon's headquarters a few weeks ago. He's part of the exclusives there, and he was recording some stuff for his brands with Amazon, so that was pretty cool. So to explain that. All right, so this is a little graphic here of what most people like to do. I was actually talking with Joey here before, and he was going to tell some things that most private label people look for when they're trying to identify a new product, right? They want to find stuff that is, and if you go to most private label courses or YouTube videos out there, this is what you're going to see. You want to. You didn't say it, so I couldn't tell you were wrong, right? You did good there. But yeah, I was going to tell you that you were wrong and that we like to teach the complete opposite. So most people are going to tell you you need to find something that is light, cheap, that can fit in a shoebox, that doesn't break, and that can ship really easily, right? Easily replenishable. And that one's not bad, but but you'll hear those other ones. Light, shoebox, cheap, you can buy it for under $10, right? So that's common things that you're going to hear people say. The problem is what? That 99% of the other people who are on Amazon trying to private label are all doing that same exact thing, okay? So you're competing in the, I didn't do the graphic, but like a red ocean, right? There's a bunch of sharks out there, and that's who you're competing with when you bring in that light product. Now, that doesn't mean that all those products are bad. If you can bring a light, cheap, small product to the market and there's not much competition, more power to you. You're gonna, have great margins and crush it. But for most of us, it's gonna be tough to identify a product like that isn't completely competitive. And I think many of us in this room, from what I've heard, are thinking about identifying that first product or trying to bring new products in. Starting with those light, cheap, small is going to be a challenge. The other thing is, if you're not familiar with Amazon and the way that we teach, we basically teach to we're not inventors, we're not engineers, so we don't create brand new products, brand new ideas. We basically recommend going after proven, tested markets. This is what our little graphic is. If you're gonna go after an unproven idea where there isn't something that's already proven to do well, you're basically in danger of, it's risky basically. And so that leads me into 3 things that we teach to look for when you're identifying a product. 3 things that we think is really important on Amazon. Number 1 is customer demand. Number 2 is competition, and then number 3 would be profitability, and someone else is gonna be talking about profitability, so I won't be getting into that too much because I think they'll handle it. So we'll focus on customer demand mostly, and then competition. So the really cool thing about Amazon is that Amazon provides us something that hardly anyone else, any other marketplace does, and that's data, okay? So all of our decision making when we try to bring a new product in is based on data, and we really try to take the emotion out of it, okay? We try not to fall in love with it. We try to look at the data, and if the data is there, then that really makes us feel a lot better about it and reduces our risk. So what kind of data are we talking about? Who here is familiar with the Amazon BSR, bestseller rank? Anybody seen that, even shopping on Amazon or heard of it? So basically, Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon, wanted to, everybody ranked books, right? Like the top 100 books. Well, he said, I want to rank everything on Amazon. And so every single product has a bestseller rank on Amazon relative to the category that it's in. And based on that, which is very important, yes, it is. So something that's in home and kitchen, which is a very large category, ranked there is very different than something in the industrial and scientific that is not as large of a category. So that's very important to note. But the bestseller rank, basically what has happened is a bunch of third-party tools and software providers have basically used this data to give us really, really good information. And so I'll cover a couple of them, and if we have questions or if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can give you more tips on this. But one of them is called Viral Launch, which is a company. There's a couple great ones out there. We happen to like Viral Launch. But a cool thing that Viral Launch does is they recently viral, like a viral video, and then launch, like you're a rocket ship, and that's their mascot. So Viral Launch, this is a tool that they developed called the Viral Launch Keyword Tool. And this tool actually will show you the search volume for a particular phrase on Amazon. So I typed in the top there, barbecue gloves, which if you have listened to our podcast, that's kind of like our joke product we use as, it's a very saturated product on Amazon. So don't go out there and private label barbecue gloves if you don't already have it. If you do have it, keep. Yeah, well, all right. Good luck to you, okay? So barbecue gloves, we can see up there. I don't know if this has a pointer, but it has in the middle of the top of the screen there, 801 exact searches a month currently, which isn't a lot. But if we look down, we can see that BBQ gloves, which is right here, does it? In the middle? Oh, here we go. BBQ gloves has 10,658 keywords, okay? So if you were going to, the next question that we're going to be talking about is ranking. If you were going to rank for a keyword, do you want to rank for barbecue gloves or BBQ gloves? Definitely BBQ gloves, right? So, and you might not have think of that at first. I might, think something different than you did. So this is a really cool tool that will give you customer demand. This is a paid tool, and I'm not associated with it other than we use it, and I do know the founder of it, but it's a completely third-party software, and it's really good for finding customer demand.
Something that you mentioned that I just want to touch on. Data is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that Amazon can offer. Obviously, other than their amazing platform. The amount of data, the amount of customers, the amount of clicks, Amazon tracks everything. So they're tracking how many times the impression of that page comes up. So they also track how many times you convert on that page, how many times you click on that page. All that data is available to you. So the more data that you can take into your decision making, the better.
Yep, and that's exactly right. Here's another tool from Viral Launch. This one is called Market Intelligence. Another popular player in the market is called Jungle Scout. Again, they're both pretty similar, but they basically provide data. And so what Market Intelligence does is basically allows you to see the amount of revenue that a listing has based on the bestseller. Now, they're just estimates, but they have gotten very good at this through all their data points that they have. And so they're pretty reliable, and they do 30-day tracking, and Viral Launch is the best at this, so that's why I talk about them. But we can see, anybody have an Instant Pot here? I just bought my wife one for Mother's Day a little bit ago. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so Instant Pot, we could see at the time that I took this, it's ranked number 2 in kitchen and dining. Again, the category is important. And the monthly revenue was 1.4 million. That's just one variation of several that they have. So we can see how this can be powerful, though, right, in trying to determine whether a listing, a product, a niche on Amazon has customer demand. And so this is a really cool tool that can show us that. And again, customer demand is just one piece. I can't get too much more detailed. But then competition is basically how many other ones that are similar are on the marketplace selling already. Joey, I know I'm going long, so I'll let you get to the next one.
It was very valuable information. Just while we still have you on the product, why don't you touch a little bit on how to rank the product?
Sure. I can't remember. That was my last slide. Sorry, I went out of it. I couldn't remember if I had more slides. So ranking is obviously really important. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't rank it, nobody's going to see it. And so when I say ranking, basically what I mean is when someone types in, we'll stick with my example earlier, if someone types in BBQ gloves, the order that they appear in the Amazon search results is the rank, essentially, right? If I type in BBQ gloves and mine shows up first, that means I'm ranked number 1, okay? And that is everyone in this room's goal. If you sell product on Amazon, that's going to be your goal, right? To rank in the top spot of search.
For a specific keyword.
For a specific keyword, and it does, every keyword can be different. And so how do you do that? There's several ways, but basically Amazon is all driven by, there's one word that drives Amazon and everything they want, and that's sales, okay? Amazon is driven, it's a sales-based platform, and the more sales you can give them, the more they love you and the more they rank you. So there are ways to get around that. Some of it gets into ways to advance your rank, such as that viral launch tool that we were looking at. The founders of that have another product that's called their viral launch launches. That's how they started. And they'll essentially help you rank your product by, they have a massive email customer list that they can send your product to, and that can help you rank the keyword by basically manipulating the Amazon algorithm. And Leslie can touch on this because technically it is a manipulation. However, we've never heard any issues with it yet, but I'll let you touch on that when we get to, when you talk, Leslie. But it is currently one of the best ways, but there are other ways to do it if you, for whatever reason, don't want to do that and take the way that most people are finding it very easy. You can drive Facebook traffic to your listing through certain keywords. You can use a two-step URL, which is basically, again, kind of manipulating the URL structure so that Amazon thinks that a customer is typing in a certain keyword to get to the listing. Again, that's the manipulation part. And then there are ways that you could drive traffic there in other ways through ads. And then one last way, and sorry, I know I'm talking long, one last way is basically through Amazon sponsored ads. So if anyone's done Amazon, you might be familiar that it's called setting up a campaign when you go to the Amazon sponsored ads. AMS is actually a little bit different than just regular sponsored ads, but it is another piece of it. And so sponsored ads are a way that you can basically, just like Google ads, advertise your product on Amazon. And essentially the first day that you bring a product to the market, you could, if you bid enough, just like, again, like Google, you could get your ad to the first spot of search, and assuming the customer doesn't have an ad blocker or whatever, you're gonna show up first. Even though you don't necessarily have reviews and all that other stuff that I can't get into that's really important. But that's kind of the basics of what you need to do, in my personal recommendation, when you bring a new product to the market.
Thank you very much, Nate. Great job. All right, next we're going to be talking to Joey Navish here. He's going to be talking about profit. Get ready, guys. This is pretty serious stuff. Okay, Joe, first question for you. Well, actually, I'll let you introduce yourself for a second, and we'll begin.
So real quickly, I've been a seller since 2012. I spent a few years doing a good amount of volume, but not much profit. Every week I saw sales going up, and for some reason when I looked at the bank account at the end of the year, I don't know where the profit was, but it wasn't in there. A few years ago, I went in a different direction. I partnered up with some guys in the children's wear market, and we grew the company a lot, but I really focus most of my time now reading the data and sharpening everything we do to make it profitable, because I never want to end up where I was of doing sales just so Amazon can make the money and not me.
I think most sellers, especially when they start, I know I'm one of them, when we started, you're just blind.
Yep, and that's really what we want to, that's what I want to focus on. And if I could just ask real quick, just to show of hands, how many people here have a seller account? Good. Okay. I just want to know our audience.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to hit you with the first question.
Go ahead.
We spoke earlier, and you did tell me that you have a retail background. So based on your retail background, we know how important it is to track profitability, comparing Amazon to a brick and mortar store. Can you tell us how you measure profitability on your Amazon platform?
Sure. So first, the thing I really love about Amazon for entrepreneurs is the ease with which you can grow and scale the business. And let me explain. If we talk about a retail store, the things that you need in order to open a retail store before you do your very first sale, you've got to rent and fix a store. You have to fill it entirely with merchandise. Where'd we go? Oh, there we go. You have to hire a staff, and you have to drive customers. And all that is before you've done your very first sale. And to contrast that with Amazon, you have no rent, maybe some minimal storage fees. You can start with one product at a time. You hire staff as you need them, and you're walking into the largest customer base in the world. And when it comes time to now grow your business and take it to the next level with retail, you're opening up more stores, which all require a very big investment that can be tough for people first starting out. With Amazon, you grow by adding more products. But as you grow, and even before you start growing, you have to focus on profitability, not just your sales. It's very easy to get caught up with the adrenaline of seeing your sales going and growing. But instead of racing to do more, first establish that you have a profitable business model, and then from there you'll be growing on a strong foundation. So to really be on top of the profitability, there's 3 keys that I want to focus on. Now, the first one is the FBA calculator, which if you're a seller, this may be a little elementary for you, but I'd want to start out here and work to a little bit more advanced. The FBA calculator is a tool provided by Amazon where it gives you the very basic outline of your fees that you're going to be charged, and it gives you a simple way to calculate your profit margin. So, as an example, we'll look at this Bluetooth speaker, which as of yesterday was the #1 Bluetooth speaker on Amazon, 27,000 reviews, and we're going to put this into that FBA calculator. So this is what it looks like when you search the product. It knows a little about it, the dimensions, the weight, and we're going to focus in on the right-hand column over here. And here's what we're going to see. For this product, we're going to put in our selling price. It's currently $20.99. Amazon's going to show us the commissions they're going to take on that, the fulfillment fees, and now we're going to plug in our cost of the product. And when we calculate, it gives us the story of this sale. Every time you sell one, you make $4.50, you get 22% margin. But there's one very important thing that I left out here and I see a lot of people leave out. And that is what they list as the ship to Amazon. And this should incorporate every expense you have to get the product from your vendor into Amazon's warehouse. So depending on your merchandise, you may be paying freight to bring it over into your warehouse. You may have to prepare it for Amazon, which may mean you need some staff, maybe you need some supplies, and you certainly have the expense of shipping it out to Amazon's warehouse. And all these expenses, if you're not factoring them in here, you're fooling yourself and you're going to be caught off guard later. So for this particular one, let's put in a $2 ship to Amazon and calculate, and we see that our margin is almost half what we thought it was. And that's the trap you're going to fall into if you leave out that additional costs. And now I want to drive home really how important profit margins are and the impact they have on your bottom line. So this is a little calculator that we use in my office to evaluate and make determinations on selling price. So to calculate, let's stick with that Bluetooth speaker. The first thing I'm going to do in the top is put in what my monthly overhead is. And this should be any fixed expense that you have in your business. If you're paying rent, if you have utility bills to pay, any softwares that you sign up for, any real expense that your business incurs, you want to be aware of it as a fixed cost. I'm going to estimate that I can sell 2,000 units of this in a month. Now, when an item is ranked #1 in the category, I'm not in the electronics category, but I know that 2,000 units a month is very conservative for something that's ranked that high. I'm going to sell it at $20.99. My FBA calculator gave me a 12% margin. So in a month, I'm going to do about $42,000 sales. And after all my overhead, I'm taking home a profit of $2,500 for the month on that one product. Now let's compare it and see what happens if I raise the price by just $2. When I put this into the FBA calculator, it tells me that my profit margin is 19%. And over that same month, if I can sell that 2,000 products, I'm at 46,000 in sales and over 6,000 in profits. So by raising it by $2, I more than doubled my profit. But I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You raise it by a couple dollars and you're not going to do as much sales. And you may be right. Not always. Sometimes we see the sales don't even fall off. But most of the time you'll be right. So I want to show you here that if you sell it for that $22.99, you earn your 19% margin, and you want to match the same profit that you earned when you were selling it cheaper. To get that very same profit, I only need to sell 1,100 units. That's the same profit with 42% less units. It's not about sales, it's about profit. Because if I can make the same profit by selling less units, that's less work on my part, and it's a lower investment in inventory that I have to make.
Question? You have your next question.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Question for you on this is, what is the single most important thing that can impact the profit margin?
Good. So key number 2 is returns, which I call the silent killer. Why do I call it the silent killer? And I want to go back to retail for a second. In retail, it's pretty simple. We make a sale, the customer comes back, they give us back the item, we give them back their money, and it's pretty straightforward. With Amazon, it's very different. There's a lot of fees that come into it. The commission that you paid on the sale, they're only going to give part of it back, not the entire thing. The fees you paid fulfillment, those are gone. And then when the item comes back to Amazon, if they determine that it's resellable, they're going to charge you a restocking fee to put it back up on the shelves. And if it's not resellable, well, then they're going to send it back to you, and it's not able to be sold. And that's an even bigger problem, because without a good way to move that, it's really going to eat into your profit margins. But let's just look at what those fees really mean.
Joe, question for you.
Yeah.
You completely remove the percentage of return rate from your profit, all of it. You take it out. Let's say your return rate is 8% on an item. Do you remove that 8% from your margin?
That's actually a great question that I'm going to show you right now, which is that it's a lot worse than that. I want to show you 2 products from my catalog. This is real data from my catalog. They're in different categories, and we have significant sales on each one to know that the data we're looking at really means something. In the first one, I started off with a 32% profit margin. It was an item with very, very low returns, 2.5%. And the ultimate impact in it is that it took about 1.5 points off that margin. It brought it down to 30.5%. Now the second product, I started off with even higher, close to 35% margin, but I had a 13% return rate. And the effect that that had after all those fees was that it brought it down 8 percentage points. So you can see that on the first product, 2.5% return rate, I saw a 5% reduction in the profits I was expecting. Whereas the second one that had the 13% return rate does not sound all that high, but it was enough that I lost 23% of the profit I thought I was going to be making. And now imagine an item where the return rate is even higher than 13%. The returns can kill you. And that's only one part of the story, because after those fees, you run into bad product reviews, you run into your sales rank, the BSR that we spoke about, is affected by a lot of different elements that figure into Amazon's algorithm. And the return rate is among the highest and most important factors in that algorithm. Amazon doesn't want to sell products that are going to get returned. And then the fourth problem I touched on is the unsellable inventory. If you don't have a way to move it, and it's just going to sit there and pile up in your warehouse, it's going to eat away whatever profits you're making. So, knowing this, knowing that it's part of the business with Amazon, in fact, one of the things that makes Amazon so great to shop on is the ease of returns. So knowing all this, how can I use this to avoid running into these problems? Because if we're not aware of it, what's going to happen is 6 months down the line, you're going to realize it. You're going to look at your account, and you're going to say, where's all that money I thought I was making? So what do we do now to avoid getting blindsided 6 months from now? Number one is, as best you can, don't sell junk. Customers have high expectations. Don't sell junk. They have high expectations, and it's very easy to return. Number two is don't mislead your customers. It's very tempting to embellish your listing, get a little of that salesmanship, and represent your product better than what a customer might end up getting. You raise their expectations, and it's only going to let them down. Really try to accurately represent your product. You only want to sell the product to the person who's going to want to keep it when they get it. You can't trick customers these days. And number three is that we know there's no way you're going to eliminate your returns entirely. Some categories, by their nature, are going to have higher returns. And going back to that FBA calculator, you want to build it into your initial margin, knowing that it's going to be reduced, because that margin that we saw on the FBA calculator is a starting point. That's the highest you'll ever get. But after all these returns come in and take their toll, you're going to be lower than that. So plan for it and be prepared for it ahead of time.
Joe, it's completely unrealistic to think that that margin that shows at the bottom of the calculator is the actual number.
Correct.
I believe, and thank God there's no one here from Amazon to fight me, but I think they want you to see that number. Because if you see that number, you think you're good. You list the product.
Absolutely.
You just want sales.
There's a lot of things.
They want and actually do your homework and put all the information in before you go and invest your hard-earned money into a product that you might not actually.
Of course, while Amazon gives you a lot of great reporting, there's a lot of these hidden fees that they don't really point out to you, and you have to be aware of it on your own. You know, Amazon cares a lot more about their customers than they do about their sellers.
Okay, last question for you, Joe. You showed us on a product level what profitability looks like. Can you show us on like a global level of like your entire company, how you would figure your overall profit?
Yes. So Amazon has some fantastic reports with a ton of data. There's dozens and dozens of these reports, and you have to learn how to read them and use that data to your advantage. Just as an aside, as your business grows and you do more and more sales, you're going to want to invest money into some software platforms and reporting tools, and you should. They'll be tremendous help to you. I highly recommend them, but they're not needed at the beginning. You certainly can start without them, and there's so much data in some of these Amazon reports that despite all the softwares that we use in my office, I've never gotten away from using a lot of these reports. So I'd like to look at one particular one that I think is very important to watch your profitability and monitor it on a regular basis, and that's the settlement reports that Amazon gives you every 2 weeks when they pay out your deposit. How many people, by a show of hands, have looked through these settlement reports? Good. From the show of hands before, there was a lot of sellers who raised their hand before and didn't raise their hand just now. So I'd like to show you how I look through them. And what I do is I dig into the most detailed version of this report. And to find that, we go to the reports menu, the payment reports, and this one's called the Flat File V2. It gives the most detail about every penny that comes in and out of your account, where it went, what it was for, on the SKU level. It looks something like this when you open it up in Excel. This report can be a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of information, and it doesn't all make that much sense. And like I said, it's the most detailed of the payment reports. The first 3 lines on there are just relating to one particular sale, where it's showing you what you brought in, what your different fees were. But the problem with these reports is that it's a lot of data, and it doesn't know anything about what our items are. It doesn't use the information that we have. It doesn't know your cost of goods. So there's no way that you can use a report like this to determine your profitability. So there's 3 steps that I think everybody should learn and put into place with Microsoft Excel. If you don't know some of these, it's really, really worth your time to learn them. There's resources online. Keep in mind, you're in the tech business now, and you got to embrace it. You go online, look these up on YouTube. You can find endless amount of lessons on them. There's websites that are devoted specifically to teaching Microsoft Excel. I visit them all the time. I learn something new every time I go to them. Every time I need something, I go to these sites and I learn from them. And these 3 functions that I'm going to run through real quick, I suggest that if you don't know them, write them down and follow up and look them up. And the first thing you need to do is maintain a master inventory file. If you're not at the point where you have databases filled with your data yet, you don't need to be, but you do have to have a file that shows you exactly what your inventory catalog is. And here's a sample one I put together. I don't sell any of these brands, so this is really just something I created for this. And what this is an Excel sheet where we've got our SKU on the left side. This is the SKU that you provide to Amazon. And then after that is some basic information about each one of those SKUs. I have here listed the vendor, the style, the cost, category, description, color, and size. Depending on the products you sell, this may vary, but the key is that this is a running file that you're growing, and every time you add products to your catalog, you're adding them to this file. Step number 2 is to learn the lookup functions in Excel. What the lookup functions allow you to do is to take that data file, that master inventory file, which has our SKU in it, and now we look at this report that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it does have our SKU number in it. So we can match that data from here to the data in our inventory file with a lookup function that turns this report and then adds all our data right into it. So now when it's showing me all this information about each sale, I know which one of the products it's talking about. It shows me the units I sold. I know the cost of those units. But even still, it's a pretty long report. And as your business grows, the report gets longer. So that's going to take us to our 3rd step to really be able to understand this, and that's pivot tables. Pivot tables are a tool in Excel that with really just a few clicks, it takes the data that's very hard to parse through, and it summarizes it into a report that looks like this. Really, this was like 3 clicks to turn that into this. And now I see summarized exactly where all those fees are going. And what I do in my business, I've done this since the beginning and continue to do every time I get a settlement, is I have a spreadsheet of my own. I have it in Google Docs, looks like this, where I take those values from the pivot table and I put in from the top for the 2-week settlement period, my total sales, my cost of goods on those sales, the fulfillment fees, the commissions, the shipping, the storage, any reimbursements, advertising charges.
Can we show these slides at the end also if anyone needs to see them?
Sure, I'll be happy to email it out also, copies of these slides. Sure, just give me 2 more minutes. The advertising charges, I put in my overhead expense, and at the bottom I get a profit of $2,300, which is a very real number. And all I did was take the data from that pivot table and move it into my spreadsheet. I keep this week after week, and it shows me my trends of where my money's going and where my profit is. And you can do this with any Amazon report, and you should be. This is a very important report. This is the inventory I have on hand at FBA. This is my money. This is my inventory, and it's sitting on the shelves there, and this is the report they're giving me. It shows me how many units and then it gives me a whole bunch of information about those units that I have no idea what they mean. But the one thing it helps me with is that it has the SKU number in it, and because I have the SKU, I can do the lookup to see what all those units are, and then I can turn that into a pivot table, and now that's a meaningful report because I see that I have 165 units, I have $1,700 worth of inventory, here's how it's broken out by my vendors. With one click, maybe I don't want to see it by vendors, I can view it, those same 165 units by category, and one click at a time, I can drill down into those 51 boots and see which vendors they come from. I can pick one of the vendors, drill down and see the different style numbers, and drill each of those down into the color. So with those simple 3 tools, we took a report that looked like this, turned it into this, and turned it into this. And that's the power that you can get from these reports.
Thank you, Joe.
One more minute. One more minute.
These essential principles will be well worth your time to study and learn. So, on the Amazon platform, the data they provide is so powerful when you learn how to use it. What did I do? Know your margins, know your expenses, dive into the data, fine-tune your profit model, and then scale up. We looked at a few basic reports. Using those same tools, you could analyze the most in-depth reports that they have, filled with mountains of information about your business. Without using them, you're flying blind. But if you understand them, if you have that laser-focused vision, you'll be able to use that information to make profitable, data-driven decisions. It's a great business, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's easy to get started. I wish everybody a lot of luck. Thank you.
And I'm just all the data, and Joe will be open to questions after, for sure. Okay, next we're going to jump to Leslie for compliance. Leslie, I'll let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Can you click it for me? I have one slide for each question.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Leslie Hensel, and I work with Joe at Riverbend Consulting, and I am the bad news girl. Sometimes we call ourselves the Amazon emergency room, because when people's accounts get suspended, or their ASINs get suspended, or their inventory gets stranded permanently, or Amazon steals their inventory, that's where we come in. I've been a seller since 2010 and started doing this kind of work about 3 years ago. And I have, along with my colleague Kelly, we have worked on more than 1,000 Amazon seller accounts.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is. Okay, so let's get started. What is the biggest mistake sellers make on Amazon?
If you are a new seller on Amazon, the biggest mistake you can make is thinking that what you believe is authentic inventory is what Amazon thinks is authentic inventory. In fact, the biggest thing that I hear from sellers who have their accounts suspended or their ASIN suspended is, I've got this cousin, and it always starts that way because they're... That's what I was about to say, actually. I've got this cousin, and he got me this great deal on this inventory, and it's always a cousin. Well, Amazon doesn't care who your cousin is because they don't know him, and they don't trust him, and they don't trust you either. All it takes is one of your customers saying, this is a fake, this isn't real, this doesn't look like it's supposed to get your ASIN suspended or even your account suspended. So authentic to Amazon means that you can show invoices that are from a manufacturer, or from an authorized distributor, or from a wholesaler. And if you're a private label seller, you still have to have invoices, even if you buy the product essentially from yourself, like you have a manufacturing entity, and then you have your store on Amazon. It's only authentic to Amazon if you've got invoices that say it's authentic, and that cover the quantity that you have sold on Amazon for 365 days. And yes, that can be a stack of invoices, but they don't care if it's from your cousin or if it fell off the back of a truck. We've had sellers that I think that's where their inventory probably came from. So sourcing the right way, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't do retail arbitrage and online arbitrage. For a little while, you kind of couldn't. Amazon wasn't taking store receipts. They are taking store receipts now, most of the time, not all the time. If you're doing retail arbitrage from places like a Nike outlet or a Coach store where it's that brand of that store, you're probably okay. But if you're buying from someplace like Marshall's, we all know where Marshall's gets their stuff. They get it from liquidators. Amazon knows they get it from liquidators too. So Amazon is going to trust that Walmart and Target have a good chain of custody. They are not going to trust that Marshall's and TJ Maxx have a good chain of custody, because you can find a lot of fakes at Marshall's and TJ Maxx. It's something you really have to watch out for. And then
I just want to touch on something you said about private label sellers. So Leslie's 100% right. Even if you are a private label seller and you make your own goods and you sell your own product on Amazon, you can still get inauthentic complaints. So don't just think you're immune to it. And it's very important, because if you do get an inauthentic complaint, your product that you built up with all of your reviews can be gone unless you can provide documentation. So even if you're a private label seller, make sure you have the right paperwork to back it up when they do come after you, because eventually they do. Some guy in the middle of nowhere is going to say, oh, this is fake, I want to return. You have to have the documents to back it up. Otherwise, you did all that work and they could shut down the listing. So don't let that happen. Get in front of it as opposed to waiting until after the fact and you get the complaint.
And you need a good system for managing your documents. And this is where a lot of our sellers really fall down, is they didn't really get the invoices up front, or they didn't keep them. I really recommend scanning in all of your receipts and invoices so that you have them with names on them that make sense to you. A huge problem is that your invoices don't show as paid. And this is pretty standard, right? Someone sends you an invoice and you pay it, and you don't ask them to send you another receipt that says it's paid. That's pretty uncommon in the business world. In Amazon land, they want every single invoice to show a balance of 0 and paid. Otherwise, you have to think like a criminal. My brother was a police officer. He was really good at it because he was a sneaky guy. And so he would tell me, I have to think like a criminal. So you need to think like the guy who's selling the stuff that fell off the truck, right? What would they do? Well, they would just get an invoice from someone for product, and then they would never actually receive the product or pay for it. But they've got an invoice that says they bought the stuff from Coach, right? So that's what Amazon assumes. They assume you're a bad guy until you prove otherwise. So they assume you just got invoices and never actually paid them. And let me tell you a quick story. Guy I'm working with today bought Settlers of Catan board games. Okay? To me, this would be the hardest thing in the world to counterfeit. His cousin, for real, his cousin got him this deal on 5,000 units of the Settlers of Catan. The manufacturer filed a counterfeit complaint. They did a test buy, and they're claiming that it's fake. It is not fake. It's not fake. Would you counterfeit that? Think how hard work that would be to counterfeit a board game. But the manufacturer says so he's off Amazon, and there's not a thing he can do about it. Why? Because he bought something that he told me he knows changed hands at least 6 times.
Okay, so that's some useful information. By the way, everyone, please write that down. When you're submitting invoices, make sure they show as paid. It's one of the easiest things you could do, and countless times I've seen it that you submit an invoice, it gets rejected, and they say, please send us more information. If you just write paid or have your manufacturer or supplier say that it's paid, it gets approved.
Yes.
So please make sure you write that down. It's a great point, Leslie. Okay, next question is, what if I have a brand? How do I protect that brand?
So if you're a private label seller, or if you own a brand or you have distribution rights on a brand, there's some really good news on Amazon lately. I know a lot of people who own brands get very frustrated because they see listings that were created by online arbitrage and retail arbitrage sellers that are not in keeping with their brand's image. Some of these listings are ugly. They have bad pictures, lousy descriptions. They're just not impressive. And well, they don't sell, and they're not in keeping with your brand image. They just look bad. The other thing is, people wonder, what if I invest thousands of dollars to make a private label product, and I put it up on Amazon, and then someone starts selling essentially the same product. They got the factory in China to use the same mold, but don't put my brand name on it. So they're essentially selling a counterfeit. What am I going to do? So Amazon has put into place brand registry. And brand registry is the best way to protect yourself on Amazon. You have to have a trademark. That's really the key thing, is that you have to actually have the trademark of your brand, and then you can apply very easily online for brand registry. You can even assign sub-users, just like you do in your Amazon account, for people to help manage your brand registry over time. So once you've done brand registry, if you have a hijacker jump on your listing, Amazon is going to give you the benefit of the doubt, not the hijacker. It's extremely important if you are selling private label products, don't list them looking like they are generic. That is another thing that we see with a lot of our sellers. They don't put their brand name in the listing, and so it just looks like a generic random thing, and it's really hard to protect that way. You have to defend it with that trademark. So if you go through the brand registry process, you can really protect your investment, and it doesn't cost you anything except that trademark paperwork that you were probably going to get anyway, and if you weren't going to, you should. Also, another thing you can do to protect your brand is you can create exclusives, of course, things you only sell on Amazon. Keep in mind, Amazon is not responsible for controlling your distribution, and they will not enforce distribution. And that is why people have all of these counterfeit claims and IP claims. It's their way of getting around that. But if you're going to be honest as a private label seller or a manufacturer, you cannot expect Amazon to control distribution. The only thing, or map pricing, the only thing they're going to control is things like inauthentic and trademark violations. So what you can do is have offerings that you only offer on the Amazon platform, which can be great sellers for you, or you can create bundles and things that other people will have a hard time knocking off from your listings. There are a lot of private label sellers that we see who make great margins by actually taking 2 or 3 of their best sellers and putting them together in a bundle. So is it easy for someone to knock off one of your products? Maybe, but can they really get a hold of all 3 and put them in branded packaging? Probably not. So it's another great strategy, and keep in mind also, some people are already buying 2 of your products, and if you put them in a bundle, you're reducing your pick and pack fees substantially, cutting them in half for each of those things. That's $1 going to your bottom line. And finally, I have to really echo what Nathan was talking about, because to me, I encourage all of our sellers, the best thing you can do to protect yourself is to diversify. That means diversifying on Amazon and outside of Amazon. So you don't want Amazon to be the only thing you do, because if you lose your account, you've got a problem with cash flow in the short term until I get you reinstated. But even inside of Amazon, you need to diversify. And what that means is if you're a seller doing online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, you ask Amazon very politely to let you open a second account, which you can do with their permission. And you tell them it's because you want to market another brand. You want to develop another brand, and it doesn't really fit with whatever you're selling. As long as you keep your products separate, don't sell the same things on the 2 accounts, you're totally good. So
I just want to add to that. You can ask them for that, and a lot of the times they do grant it, but you still need to have different LLC information and an address.
right.
So you don't want to mix that because that can cause you problems. So if you do want to open up a second account, just make sure you treat it like a completely separate business, but you can log in from the same computer or IP.
Right, your banking and your tax ID information need to be different, but everything else, you're good. You can actually ship from the same location. That's totally cool. But by having these two accounts on Amazon, you're diversifying, and especially if you have one that is where you sell the things you source from wholesale and other distribution sources, and your second account is your private label brand that you've brought to market. That way, if something does happen to one account, you're safe, and also if you have margin pressure on one account, you know you're still creating profits in the other one.
Thank you. Last question. How can companies, or I guess how can sellers, provide a great customer experience?
So as was mentioned earlier, Amazon is not that into you. If you're a seller, they just don't care. They really don't care about you. They don't care about your business. They don't care about your employees or your bank account. They don't care that this is how you make your living. They care about their customers. And their customers will always come first. And that's why, okay, if you've had a really annoying return that should not have been done, or if you've gotten, used shoes back in a box where you sent out new ones, raise your hand. Have any of y'all had like ridiculous returns? Yes, it's every Amazon seller's nightmare that people will send back a brick, literally, where you shipped out a computer and you get a brick back and it's a return and they get their money back from Amazon. So on the there's always going to be creepy people. We all know that even in brick and mortar retail stores, there are bad customers out there. What you have to do as an Amazon seller is reduce that as much as you can with the reasonable people in the world. So the first thing to remember is to sell like Amazon. And that means treating customers the way that Amazon treats customers. Most of the experiences I've had with Amazon personally as a customer have been really great. I ask for a return. They let me return the item. Sometimes I don't even have to send it back. I know as a seller that's terrible. But as a buyer, it's great when you don't even have to send it back because it's not worth it to Amazon. You need to have that same kind of positive experience for your customers as a third-party Amazon seller. They need to be happy when they're finished because you got to remember most of the time if they're contacting you, they're already unhappy. You're starting from a bad place. You have to turn it into a positive because we don't want you getting negative store feedback or an A to Z claim. That's the worst thing that can happen, right? So what does Amazon do? Well, one thing Amazon does is they create standard scripts for all of their customer service people. And I'm sure you've noticed if you've ever done a chat with someone they're mostly in the Philippines, you're doing a chat with the guy in the Philippines, it'll take them a while, like nothing's happening, and all of a sudden this really long answer pops up on the screen. That's because he cut and pasted it. Yeah. And that's why if you've gotten notices from seller performance that make no sense in your account, that's why they cut and pasted it, and it just was the wrong thing. So your team needs to have those kind of responses, and they all need to be written at a time when you're not already angry at the customer doing the ridiculous return. Because let's face it, you may think you're being really polite, but when you're really angry, they can probably feel it in your email. So you write these responses when you're pretty darn happy. We actually do email for people who have Amazon accounts. We answer their customer messages for them, partly so they can spend their time on other things, and partly because it takes the emotion out of it. But what we do is we look through all of their customer messages, and we pick out the things that we've seen over and over and write these canned responses. And then each time we see a new thing come up, we add it to our library. So every Amazon seller, even if you have a small account, start this library of responses so that when you hire someone to do it for you, they're doing it the right way, the way you want them to. Another thing I recommend is to accept returns or hit refund.
Just accept the return.
Low friction is what we like to call it. If you sell items that are inexpensive, set some kind of a number for your company. If it's a purchase that's less than $10, $15, whatever the number is, anyone in customer service is authorized to hit refund. I know that's painful, but you end up with a happy customer, and frankly, by the time you've gone through all the hoops and had the bad inventory returned and eaten all the fees, you've already eaten all the fees, you probably can't resell the item if it's been opened. really, you might financially be better off if you just hit refund, especially below a certain point. And let's talk a little bit about product quality. Everything you sell should be like a gift for your mom or your mother-in-law. It should be perfect. The box should be perfect. The seals should be intact. Nothing should look like it has fallen off the back of a truck, but it also shouldn't look like it's been sitting on a shelf in your warehouse for 2 or 3 or 5 years, because believe it or not, when a customer gets a scuffed box, they will say it's inauthentic. When they get something that the color is a little bit faded, they'll say it's fake and it's from China. And when it's something that was manufactured here. If you have great product quality at every stage of the game, you will greatly reduce the number of problems you'll have with Amazon, and you're also going to stop those pesky returns that are going to kill your bottom line.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Yes.
Great info. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Lenny Ash.
Yeah.
Lenny's going to be talking about fulfillment. So the difference between FBM and FBA. I'm sure a lot of you guys are contemplating what to do. If you should do FBM or if you should do FBA. FBM, just for your information, is fulfilled by merchant, which means that you guys ship the product at your expense, your UPS account, FedEx account, or FBA using Amazon's rates and their fees. So, Lenny, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll answer some questions.
Sure. So, thank you to Exceed Network for hosting this event, and to Joe for putting this together. I started selling, as he mentioned, on the Dinosaur on Amazon. Back in the day, Amazon was a bookstore and a media store before they got into every other category out there. So that's why, and I happen to be a DVD in the media category, which is why I was on the marketplace for so long. And just over the years, selling in that marketplace, we've refined and grown efficiencies and learned how to run as tight of a warehouse as possible, as how to tighten the shipping process, tighten the listing management process. And over the years of doing it ourselves, the DVD category and books just online kind of dwindled, and we had this whole infrastructure set up to handle product and volume. So we parlayed it into a service business. At the end of the day, you're just shipping a widget, put it in an envelope and get out the door. Whatever fits the model works. And so that's kind of how we got into the service business. And a lot of the service that we provide is in warehousing, which is why I'm going to be touching on the topic tonight.
So tell us the difference between FBA and FBM. What are the benefits of both?
So, first most of you raise your hand when I ask, do you sell on Amazon? So you must be familiar with FBA. If you're not, well, take a minute to define it, so not make any assumptions. It's fulfillment by Amazon, which essentially means you're sending your product to their warehouse and they're going to do the fulfillment for you. So this doesn't mean that Amazon's buying from you, if you've never done it before. It's your product, you own it. Amazon's functioning as a public warehouse, and you send product to them, and they'll pick, pack, and ship for you. The advantages of using FBA include the Prime badge. I think that's probably the biggest. Everyone's got to know what Prime is by now. 2-day shipping, you get all the perks of everything else that comes with it. Most of the people who are in this room probably also shop on Amazon, like Joe showed the graphic of the front door with all the boxes in front of it. Everyone shops on Amazon, and I'm sure when you do, you look to see if there's a Prime logo when you buy anything. So you can get that Prime badge on your listing if you send it to their warehouse to do fulfillment. So, and if you're on a competing listing, like reselling, like we touched on earlier, then you can still send your product to Amazon to do the fulfillment for you. And when you're repricing against the other sellers, if your item is Prime, even if you're more expensive, you'll get the buy box over someone else. So there's tremendous advantages to selling using Amazon's fulfillment services. And another great perk for using their service is that they do all the customer service for you. So like Leslie touched on, you don't want in order to deal with the returns, with those emails of people sending you, shipping you back bricks instead of shoes. So if your product is at Amazon, they'll handle all the customer service. Every customer is going to email you, where's my product, where's my shipment? You don't have to deal with any of that. You don't have to have a full staff just for customer service. When your product is in their warehouse, they handle it. They use their canned responses. You don't have to deal with it. And more importantly, in Amazon's eyes, you're not responsible for it. So if something goes wrong or you mishandle the customer dealing with it yourself, if Amazon's doing the customer service for you, you're not going to be on the hook in terms of getting your account suspended, things like that. And having your inventory in their warehouse, you can also use it for multi-channel fulfillment. I was talking to some sellers before we started, and they mentioned to me that they actually use the center to sell on Amazon, and they also fulfill other channels. So if you're on other sites, selling on eBay or Walmart or other marketplaces, you can use Amazon warehouse to fulfill those orders for you also.
Not Walmart, though. Not Walmart.
Right.
At
Yeah.
Walmart, they don't have a deal, so to speak. It's
So you
like
can't-
Red Sox, Yankees type of thing.
So that's about FBA. FBM is a much simpler model. There's not really much to go over. You basically fulfilled by merchant, which means you're filling the orders yourself. So as the orders come in, you're going to have to pull, pick, pack, ship, and deal with it yourself. You're going to have to deal with your own customer service. The pluses are that you're in control of your inventory. So if you happen to be a distributor or a wholesaler who's selling product, the product is in your warehouse. So you can continue selling it to your wholesale customers through your distribution channels or on other channels, and your inventory is not restricted. When it's sitting at FBA, you don't have ready access to it. If you do a removal order through the Collier merchandise, you'll get it back in 80 envelopes, shipping from every distribution center that Amazon put your product in all over the country, and it takes weeks. So you think you have inventory, and you might think that it's liquid sitting at Amazon. And if you make a sale, I can recall my inventory and just flip it wholesale. Not so simple. So it's one of the things to consider when you're figuring out should you do FBA or FBM is how much inventory are you stocking and what do you need to carry, what do you need control over.
Something I just want to jump in there, Lenny. Just because you're going to do FBA or FBM, it doesn't mean you only have to do one or the other. I think,
Good point.
if there are people here that are wholesalers that have inventory that want to sell to other retailers, you can do a combination. You can start out by listing FBM and get a feel for the market, and then you could, do some forecasting and see, okay, after a month I sold 60 pieces. Now let me send in 30 days worth of product to FBA. So at least you're kind of testing the waters without just dumping all of your inventory to Amazon. And if it doesn't sell, you get it with fees and things like that. So it doesn't mean that you have to do one or the other. I actually think that in most successful businesses, you have a combination of both. So just keep that in mind.
Sure. So just in comparing it side by side, and covered most of the points, but just to look at it visually side by side. On FBA, the first pro is no overselling inventory. If you're selling on Amazon, the biggest no-no is to cancel an order because you don't have it in stock. So if you're selling on multiple marketplaces or you have your own distribution channels and you're selling your inventory FBM, you may have your item listed and tell Amazon that you have 10 units available for sale, and on another marketplace you just got an order for all 10 units. If you didn't update Amazon or reduce it to 0 and it sells, you have to fill that order. If you don't have the inventory to fill it, you're going to cancel it. Few of those, and you can potentially run into problems and you need to use Leslie's services to get reinstated. So when it's at FBA, you don't have that risk. You cannot oversell. If it's in stock and available, they will list it for you and sell it. If it's not available, it won't be for sale. You won't run into that problem. The Prime badge we spoke about, getting 2-day shipping. I'm sure everyone in the room, if you saw something Prime and something not Prime, even if it costs an extra couple of dollars, you probably hit the Prime button to get that easy return process in case something goes wrong, to get it in 2 days. The buy box advantage, if you're a seller, you want to make sure you get the buy box. Somebody mentioned earlier the keeping your returns percentage low is a big part of the equation. So is being Prime. So you can accomplish that by sending it to FBA. And the customer service portion of the program is crucial. If you're selling yourself and you answer those emails that come in every day, when you start selling FBA, you'll really appreciate the free time that you will find just by letting Amazon handle the customer service. So, some of the challenges of selling FBA, a major con that if you have to take into consideration is we're all responsible to pay sales tax for the product that we sell on Amazon. We have to collect it and pay it. So when you're shipping your product to FBA's warehouse, it's as if you have, and they distribute that product to every one of their fulfillment centers all over the country, it's as if you have a presence in each state where your product is sitting, which means that you're now obligated to collect and pay sales tax in each of those states. So if you're going to use FBA, just be prepared to keep track of, make sure you have all your paperwork in line and you're registered to resell in every state. It's a big part of selling online is filing and reporting sales tax. You have just something to be aware of. The FBA inventory prep, when you're sending stuff to FBA, it's not also simple. If you're in the clothing business and you have everything packed by case, you have assorted sizes in a box. 4, 8, 8, 4 is like a standard ratio of different sizes. If you're in clothing, you get what I'm talking about. If not, it's basically having assorted product in one box. That's how you get it overseas when you're buying in volume. So when you're shipping to FBA, you don't have the flexibility to do that. You're going to tell Amazon, here's what I want to send into your warehouse, and they're going to give you back a distribution. You have to then unpack your box, meet their requirements, label it, polybag it, and then repack it per their distribution, and then ship it out to each place. So that's some of the work that goes into it you should be prepared for, and you have limited access to your inventory, which we spoke about, and their multi-channel fees is something that you have to pay attention to. Although they can fill orders for other marketplaces, you have to be very conscious of what they charge for it, because when they fill orders, Joey Tab has shown us the FBA fee calculator. Those fees are applicable only for items that you sell on Amazon's website. So if your item is going to ship to a sale that you made on eBay, the fees are double, maybe even more. That's something to keep in mind. And if you're going to fulfill the merchant, if you're going to fulfill the product yourself, then we kind of touched on everything when looking at it side by side. You have something that is relatively new. I don't know if has anyone heard of Seller Fulfilled Prime? Anyone know what that is? All right, so Seller Fulfilled Prime, if you have your own warehouse and you want that Prime badge and you still want full control over your inventory, you can still be FBM. Amazon has a Seller Fulfilled Prime program. You can apply for it. If you qualify and you can meet their standards of shipping, then they'll give you the Prime badge and you can still sell the product and ship it from your own warehouse. So that's, Amazon has a lot of documentation on it with what the process is and how to qualify. If you want that Prime badge and you want to keep the inventory in-house, then that's a very good solution. Having control over your inventory is another main point we spoke about. If your shipping expenses are lower, then you can afford to sell at lower prices, which might give you an edge to get the buy box. Some of the cons are that you have to actually manage inventory. You have to make sure you keep it up to date, and you have way more responsibility as a seller. If you're selling FBM, you're responsible for every aspect of the sale the whole way through. When FBA is dealing with it, a lot of the process goes on their shoulders. The overhead cost of, you have to have a warehouse, you have to have employees. You don't want to get stuck running a business. You're running a business and you need to spend your time sourcing product or growing your business, getting into different categories, optimizing your listings. If you're doing FBN, you're going to be the one pulling, packing, and shipping your orders. There's no vacation. If your item is listed and it sells, you have to ship it that day. You don't have time. That becomes the top priority. So anything else that you have going on, if you're going to be selling FBM, something to keep in mind is you should be prepared to fulfill the orders the same day it comes in, not let your other business practices get in the way. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lenny.
I'll wrap up with one more quick thing to pay attention to, is if you're going to sell FBA, which you have to analyze for your own business what makes sense and what doesn't, then you have to keep in mind the different fees that are applicable to your product. If the example that Joey brought up before is you're searching a product that's on Amazon's catalog already. What if you're a private label? How are you going to know what they charge you? How do you know what the fees would be if you're listing the product for the first time? You want to know what your costs are before you go in. So Amazon has these charts, which you can find in their documentation. It's pretty easy to find if you Google Amazon FBA fees or FBA fee chart. But it's something to be aware of. You should know how they calculate it and where your item falls before you send it to Amazon's warehouse so that you can anticipate what the fees will be. And it's something that you have to be careful looking at and make sure that you fall into the right category, standard size, oversized, because the difference in fulfillment fees is tremendous. Talking about something that could be £1 could cost you $2.41. If the item is packaged in a way where it exceeds the dimensions that they give you, even though it weighs half a pound, they'll still qualify it as oversized. So on that little item that weighs half a pound, let's say you're selling a t-shirt, you think that you're going to put it in a bag and send it to Amazon, oh, it's less than a pound, it should be $2.41. If you packed it incorrectly, they're going to ding you for $8.13 in fulfillment fees. So you got to make sure that the product is packed properly.
I just want to jump on that point. 3 weeks ago, we had an item that we wanted to send in, very small product. We thought, we looked at all the charts, $3.19. That's like the standard for a 1 pound item. And the way we packed it was not correct. It was slightly over the dimensions. Instead of $3.19, it went to $8.58. So you're talking about a $5 jump, and on a product that's $18 or $20 or $25, it can kill your entire margin. So be very careful about the dimensions. I know it's something that's hard to do, but you need to be, on top of all the aspects. And if you're going to miss that, it can totally eat into your margins of your product.
The last thing to be aware of, I won't go into detail on this, but it's just something that you should be aware of. Again, you can reference it on Amazon sites. When you're stocking merchandise at FBA, they charge you a monthly storage fee. If you exceed a certain time limit and your inventory is just not moving, it's very easy to lose track of inventory that's not in your face. And especially if you have a large catalog of products listed, a lot of inventory going on. If your product is sitting at Amazon's warehouse, it's very easy to just forget about it if you're not looking at reports. And twice a year, they will charge you what's called a long-term storage fee. And that can kill your business's profitability if you don't realize what you have sitting there and how long it's been there. So something else, if you choose to do the FBA route, something that you must be aware of is their long-term storage fees, their monthly storage fees, and that has to be managed. Your inventory would have to be managed properly to make sure that you don't fall into that trap. Come that...
They actually just changed that. Instead of being twice a year, it's just
monthly.
6 month rolling now.
6 month rolling.
Yeah, so it used to be February 15th and August 15th. It's just after 6 months, it's...
That's starting in a couple of weeks now. July something. Yeah. So again, the
Either
chart.
sell it or recall it.
Yes.
Basically.
So if you're approaching that limit where you know that you're going to get those fees, you have to do the math. What pays, what makes sense, what depends on your profit margin, on your stocking it by you. Just something to be conscious of is those fees, and something that you have to look up and be well versed with if you're going to stock your product on Amazon.
Awesome.
Not anymore.
Actually, we want to have 2-3 questions, so if anyone wants to ask a question, raise your hand and we'll pass the mic.
Out of all 1,000 accounts that you reinstated, have you ever seen a suspension based on your URL manipulation?
Super URLs?
Well, I mean, he mentioned all types of different hacks in URLs. I'm just wondering the general. I feel like everyone tries to come up with a 2-step URL you mentioned, or
Right.
what's your take on it? And just have you seen suspensions on that, or just where's Amazon going with that?
I've seen 2. And they were both extreme cases where that was pretty much their entire way of marketing their product, was through super URLs. It's a relatively rare suspension. I will tell you, though, with product review manipulation and platform manipulation, Amazon is getting extremely serious. We have a client who has a $20 million supplement business, private label, second offense of product review manipulation, which is similar to the super URLs that falls under that basket, his account is gone. 2 strikes and you're out. The new rule is the first time you're suspended for product review manipulation or platform manipulation, you get a 21-day irrevocable suspension. You cannot appeal it. You will be suspended 21 days. The second time you do it, you are gone. And it doesn't matter who you have, even inside of Amazon, who is at bat for you, like my guy, you cannot get your account back. So be very careful.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up now. I want to thank Joey and his incredible panel for tonight. But before everybody goes, I need a big favor from everybody. You'll be getting a survey by email by the time you leave the building. I'd like you to fill it out. It's very helpful for us. I'd also like to know, just by show of hands, who would be interested in any workshops going forward on any of the categories tonight, not the middle. And if anybody is interested in mentorship with teams, just a show of hands, great. So the survey has these questions. Please fill them out. And thanks, and have a great night. Enjoy the day.